Greetings and salutations. Welcome to a fresh hour of CBS Sports HQ delivered by Papa John's. Russ Taylor here in studio. Championship weekend in college football already off to a rollicking start. What might we have in store for us today? Well, the SEC championship game features the top team in all the land.
We will have high standards here, and we will fulfill those standards.
Brian Kelly arrived in Baton Rouge and wasted no time setting the expectations for his new football program. One with rich tradition and lofty goals, but looking to reestablish itself after 2 straight disappointing seasons. And after just 1 game, it certainly felt like LSU may be in for another rough year. Even members of the media seem to be doubting Kelly's ability to bring the Tigers back to glory.
We'll open it up to this late arriving media crowd. I don't think it has anything to do with winning. I think it has to do with being on time.
Then the pressure grew after a 40-13 drubbing at the hands of Tennessee in Baton Rouge. But as the saying goes, it's not how you start, but rather how you finish. The Bayou Bengals rattled off 5 big wins since, mauling rival after rival in the process before getting stunned in College Station. But even after that, they still have the chance to be kings of the conference in Brian Kelly's first season. But standing in their way, college football's final boss, the Georgia Bulldogs. A ferocious pack of dogs that has torn through its challengers all season long. Top 10 in total defense and total offense. Not a weakness in sight. And in their line of vision, a second consecutive national championship, which no team has accomplished since the playoff era began in 2014. But this just might be the group to do it.
I've been proud of what our guys have done, but I'm always looking for our guys to play their best, and our best game is ahead of us.
The Dogs seek a dynasty. The Tigers are here to take down Goliath. It's all bite versus all fight. A championship is on the line in Atlanta, and the college football world will be watching on CBS.
LSU had a chance to put themselves in position to make the playoff with a win today, but they blew that chance at Texas A&M last weekend. So the Tigers will look to knock Georgia off their perch atop the standings. Bulldogs just the second team in the playoff era to have back-to-back undefeated regular seasons. The defending national champs, 3 wins away from repeating the feat. For a preview of the SEC championship game on CBS, we send it out to Mercedes-Benz Stadium and welcome in Dennis Dodd and Josh Pate.
Well, Dennis Dodd alongside Josh Pate here. SEC Championship Saturday has arrived. We're in the shadow of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Dennis, let me put it to you like this. Pretend it's July, and I'm telling you Brian Kelly's going to be in this game. How much would you make fun of me?
I would make fun of you a lot.
Yeah.
I think Brian Kelly's a very successful coach, but the depths of where LSU was and came from at 6-7 to this, even with 4 losses, is impressive. And I think that the upside for LSU is great, just not today.
Right, and we'll get into predictions for the game. I think the other thing to talk about, and it's sort of grown as a theme throughout the week, is Georgia avoiding complacency this year. They've been undefeated. They had a close call against Missouri, but otherwise that Tennessee game ended up not really being a threat for them. I think it's interesting, Dennis, because I don't really think we could have seen this coming. Certainly we knew last year's team was good. Certainly we knew a lot of those guys were going to go in the draft. They did go in the draft. But there was this other thing that happened. You were right in the middle of the storm in the spring and summer in this sport. There was so much talk about everything other than the Georgia Bulldogs and on the field. And normally you get this white-hot spotlight on you after you win a title. They didn't have it. And so the normal complacency heating lamp wasn't really shined on that program. And as a result, they're every bit as hungry seemingly this year as they were last year.
I totally agree, to the point that I think even right now, there's not that kind of talk. You know, we're talking about USC from last night and what happened to them and what happens to Ohio State. Nobody's still really talking about Georgia repeating, and the floor is really, really deep for them.
Yeah.
Because they can lose and still not win the SEC since 2017 and win a national championship. In fact, I think that would be likely, even if they lost to LSU today. Not what they want to do. They're the better team. They're big favorites. But people still aren't talking about them repeating.
You know, the funny thing is, if you really dive deep into it, which we're not going to do a ton, but if you dive deep into it, if they win today, They're the 1 seed. They're playing in this building again about a month from now. If they lose today, they're probably the 4 seed playing in this building again about a month from now in all likelihood. So let's dive into the game, and let's switch it over to the LSU Tigers for just a second. Health of Jaden Daniels notwithstanding, let's just assume we get enough of him. Where's your mind at? What are you looking at with that team?
I've said he needs to have a game like he did in the opener against Florida State, and subsequently with his legs. If they don't have the +1 ability from him to get Georgia off schedule, to get some gouge plays, some chunk plays, because they're not going to get it, I don't think, in the passing game. I think Keely Ringo and Christopher Smith are all Americans.
Yeah.
To me, I don't know how you go downfield. It doesn't say they can't win. I'm saying you need Jaden Daniels to get out of the pocket, create some plays. What we don't know is if he's totally healthy. We just know he's playing. I mean, he may have that ankle strapped up beyond belief, but they need to have him going.
Yeah, so the first thing to think about is you don't have to go back too far, Dennis. We were in our hotel rooms last night. We were watching USC, and we were watching Utah. And the Trojans were favored for a reason because of Caleb Williams. But then all of a sudden, Caleb Williams sort of comes up limping, and he still finished the game. Maybe we see Jaden Daniels finish his game today, but if he doesn't have that mobility, you and I were arguing beforehand, how big was the percentage? How big was the chunk of the playbook that was taken away from USC? And it's really more than 50%, because if you tell me Caleb Williams can't run, or today, if you tell me Jaden Daniels can't run, it's a long afternoon, and it's not a little chance. There's no chance. Opposite 27 or 28 non-offensive points that you're going to beat Georgia. Therefore, my key for LSU is chunk plays, but especially when they get to midfield. You've got nothing to lose. You've got to throw the ball deep. I don't think you're getting down in the red zone and having a lot of success against Georgia, which brings us back to the Bulldogs. You can go anywhere you want to, but a big key today. What are you looking for with Kirby Smart's team?
I was going to go what you went off yesterday and this week, red zone. If LSU gets into the red zone, it's a losing proposition against this defense. You just mentioned it. You've got to get chunk plays over the top to get there. If they get into the red zone, we've seen it time after time, you get stuffed field goals instead of touchdowns. If that, the defense is great. I keep talking about the best generationally last year. Top 10 this year. Still maybe one of the best in the country. And I'm looking forward to some sort of Georgia-Michigan playoff game where, by the way, Michigan is the second best defense in the country and pretty salty and pretty real. But for today, I just think it's just keeping on track, keeping what they do. Stetson Bennett becomes some sort of Heisman Trophy candidate by the end of the day if he isn't already. And the Georgia story continues.
I think back to week 1 when LSU lost Mason Smith, who would be just a stalwart in the middle of that defensive line, and they've ended up making it here without him. This, you could make the argument, is the most athletic defense that Georgia will have played all year. Maybe not the best team, or maybe it is, we'll see. I think 2 things. Number 1 is you have to make Georgia either play match points with you or you have to make them play catch-up. Because your best shot is getting them to throw the ball. And that's no knock on Stetson Bennett, but Dennis, they're not great in turnover margin this year.
No.
He has thrown some picks. The problem, as it relates to the opposition for Georgia, is most of the time they're suffocating you to the point where it's a luxury. If they want to throw the ball, they can, but they don't have to. Therefore, if we were to see this game start the way none of us think it will, and LSU were to get up like 10-3, and it's early second quarter, we've all settled in, and you're thinking to yourself, when's Georgia going to turn it on here? Well, all of a sudden, turn it on starts to mean we got to throw the ball. We got to open up the offense.
Yeah.
And that is where the Harold Perkins of the world could start to step up and maybe force some turnovers. Absent that, though, man, I've tried to paint the picture for an upset all week. And the other thing that maybe I go back to if I'm just trying to make the purple and gold argument is we have seen Kirby Smart, Brian Kelly. And we've seen those 2 Notre Dame-Georgia games. They were close. Georgia won both. They were close. So final prediction here.
Georgia's going to play close because I want to make this point before I do my pick. Georgia is what Alabama was circa 2007 to 2013. Game manager quarterback, for better or worse, punt the ball, play defense. The Tennessee game, 27-13, to me, could have been 50-13. They shut it down in the second half. That being said, too many athletes for LSU on defense. Georgia wins, but LSU within the number, but still not close enough to make Georgia sweat.
I think I'm going to roll with Uncle Dennis here. LSU covers, but I think Georgia could not only win, but win comfortably in their mind, and both of us still cash our tickets. It should be a fun-filled afternoon, regardless. From Atlanta, we'll know a lot more about the playoff picture by the time the sun sets.
Josh Pate and Dennis Dodd taking LSU with the points. This is the 5th time LSU and Georgia are going to meet in the SEC championship game. The Tigers won 3 of the previous 4. Interestingly, none of the ones that have come before have been remotely close. And for more on the SEC championship game, we welcome in 2 parts of the Cover 3 podcast, Chip Patterson and Tom Fornelli. And guys, as we just saw when UGA and LSU meet for the SEC title, it hasn't been particularly competitive on the field. And the odds makers seem to think that trend will continue because the Bulldogs are given 17.5 today. The total's 52. Tom, you're up first. What's the play?
Yeah, I think Georgia is the much better team here. It's no disrespect to LSU, who did win the West and got here. But when I look at these two teams, there just seem to be a different species compared to one another. And then the questions with Jaden Daniels, who has the ankle injury. How healthy is he? We saw last night in the Pac-12 championship how big of an impact it can be when a quarterback whose mobility is a big part of what you do on offense suddenly is not able to move. And the Utah defense is nothing like the Georgia defense that LSU has to try to solve. So when I look at what's likely to happen in this game, yeah, there have been times this year when Georgia has sort of sleptwalked through games. If you look at that Kent State game, the Mizzou game, Kentucky a couple weeks ago, but those were opponents Georgia realized it really did not have to go 100% against to win. It was just happy to get the win and move on. If we look at how Georgia has played in games against its toughest competition or its rivals, I'm talking about Oregon to open the season, Auburn, Florida, Georgia Tech, they've blown them out. When Georgia wants to come and play, Georgia is the best team in the country, and it is the best team in the country by a wide margin. This is the SEC championship. Georgia's not going to be sleepwalking through this game. It wants to win it. It wants to lock up the number 1 seed, and it wants to be able to pick the Peach Bowl for its semifinal. They are going to win this game, and they are going to win it big. I'm laying the points with Georgia.
I've got a lot of respect for LSU's defense. I think defensive coordinator Matt House has done a terrific job taking a bunch of pieces. They've got young players. We see Harold Perkins becoming an absolute superstar. They've got transfers, and they've been able to get all on the same page, and they have been as important as Jaden Daniels to being able to get LSU to the top of the SEC West, to the SEC championship game here in year 1 under Brian Kelly. I do not, however, have as much respect for LSU's offense, at least not enough to be able to gobble up all those points. I wouldn't be surprised if LSU does end up sneaking inside the number, but sounds like it's going to be a sweat. And so taking one of the most certain things that we have in all of college football, which is the supremacy of the Georgia defense and an LSU defense that has impressed me a lot, I'm going to be attacking the total because there's a couple different ways that this can cash. LSU's defense might be able to shrink this game, cause some problems for Stetson Bennett. Maybe the Georgia offense has a couple of turnovers. Or if this thing is an absolute blowout and LSU just simply cannot score and that's obvious early, well, then I don't think that the Tigers are going to be able to score enough. So a Georgia blowout that can go under or a close game that can also go under. 2 ways to win playing the total here.
All right, Chip Patterson and Tom Fornelli, thanks so much. The SEC championship game, it's LSU versus number 1 Georgia coming your way at 4 p.m. Eastern on CBS.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.